Hi everyone, my name's Paul, and this episode is part of a series called Glimpses of Jesus. We're on a journey through the Old Testament. The plan is to stop off at the main events, to examine them, and ask how they point us to Jesus and salvation in Him. Last time we looked at Abraham. Here we're focusing on Jacob, Abraham's grandson. Now, there's a line in a song by the American band Weezer that goes like this. If you want it, you can have it. But you've got to learn to reach out there and grab it. That's the message of our day. You want to achieve something in life? You've got to go and grab it with both hands. You've got to push, push, push. Yet how does that fit with the life of faith? God says, be still. God says, do not fret. God says, wait on me. He doesn't say, go out there and grab it. True, faith doesn't equal inactivity, but it does mean trusting God with our lives and resting in His timing and blessing. That's a lesson we learn as we look at the life of Jacob. Now, the first thing we need to note about Jacob is that he's a man who received promises from God. That's important. Isaac, Abraham's son, has married a woman called Rebekah, and the Bible tells us that Rebekah is unable to have children. This isn't uncommon, but it's a problem for God's plan of salvation. Remember God's covenant with Abraham, a covenant that would pass down through the generations, all the way to Jesus. If Isaac and Rebekah don't have kids, the covenant stops. This is massive. Isaac prays, and then in Genesis chapter 25 and verse 21, the Lord was receptive to his prayer, and his wife Rebekah conceived. At this point, there is a collective sigh of relief. The covenant continues. During the pregnancy, Rebekah feels movement in her womb, more than the normal kicking and wriggling. So she asks God what's going on. He replies in Genesis 25 and verse 23. And the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb. 2 peoples will come from you and be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. What is she told here? Rebekah is pregnant with twins. The twins will have families that will become 2 nations. And then the promise. God has a particular plan to bless the younger twin. That's Jacob. Later, God fleshes out his promise. In Genesis 28, Jacob is running away from the land of Canaan. We'll see why in a moment. Jacob stops at Bethel, about 10 miles north of Jerusalem. As he sleeps, he dreams of a stairway to heaven with angels going up and down. At the top is the Lord, and Jacob hears him say, your offspring will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out toward the west, the east, the north, and the south. All the peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. Look, I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go. I will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Do you recognize these words? It's the covenant promise God gave to Abraham. Now he gives it to Jacob. What's Jacob supposed to do? God promises to bless him and make him into a great nation. What's Jacob's responsibility? Is it to push down walls with all his might until it happens? No, he's supposed to believe and trust God. If you're a Christian today, God has made promises to you. He's promised you're his child. He's promised to be with you. He's promised to work good in your life. He's promised hope for eternity. What are we supposed to do? It's not our job to make it happen. No, we're meant to believe and trust God. What's your main approach to life? If you want something, you got to go get it? Or is it patiently waiting on the Lord? Remember, faith does not equal inactivity. But there's a huge difference between trusting and grabbing, between waiting on God and trying to force the issue. Jacob's natural approach is not faith. He's a schemer who tries to manipulate blessing in his life. And we see that early in the biblical account. Esau is Jacob's older brother. As such, he would get the bigger inheritance and would take over as head of the family when Isaac died. One day, Esau comes home and Jacob's cooking stew. Esau's filled with hunger pangs, and when he smells the food, he's desperate and asks Jacob for some. Without hesitation, Jacob spots the opportunity. In Genesis chapter 25 and verse 31 we read, Jacob replied, "First, sell me your birthright." In the moment, Esau's blinded by his desire for food. He agrees and gives up his spot as the oldest son. Now, Esau here is a fool. But let's focus on Jacob. Is he behaving as God would want him to? Jesus teaches you should love your neighbour as yourself. Doesn't that include giving them food when they're hungry? And remember, Jacob doesn't have to extort the position from Esau. God has promised it to him already. The older will serve the younger. What's Jacob relying on here? His own ability to manipulate, or God's love and faithfulness? The tale of deceit continues. Isaac gets old and plans to pass on the covenant blessings to Esau. Genesis 25 and verse 28 tell us that Esau was Isaac's favourite, and Isaac intends to make sure Esau receives the promises. Rebekah has her favourite too. You guessed it, Jacob. When she hears Isaac's plan, she instantly launches a scheme of her own. She makes Isaac's favourite food. She puts goat skin on Jacob's hands and neck. Why? Esau was hairy and Jacob was not. Isaac's eyesight was bad, so how Jacob felt was more important than how he looked. Then Jacob pretends to be Esau and goes in to see Isaac. The plan's almost flawless, but Jacob just couldn't get Esau's voice right. In Genesis chapter 27 and verse 22 we're told, "So Jacob came closer to his father Isaac. When he touched him, he said, 'The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau.'" In the end, touch wins over hearing. The result, Jacob cons Isaac into blessing him. If you read through the passage, you'll notice there's a startling absence of prayer at this point. When Isaac and Rebekah couldn't have children, what happened? Isaac prayed. When Rebekah is worried because the babies in her womb are jostling for space, what does she do? She inquires of God, but not here. At this point, Jacob and Rebekah are not an example of faith. Instead, they force an outcome through their actions, seemingly unconcerned by the sin they leave in their wake. What's your main approach to life? Is it if you want something, you've got to go grab it? Or is it calm trust in the Lord? Let's think about that for a moment. You go for a job interview. Now it's important to prepare. But where's your faith? In your ability, in the interview room, in your knowledge? Or is it in God? Where's prayer in the process? When the interview comes around, are you content that God's in control? Or are you frantic? In Jesus, in his death, God shows how much he loves us. In Jesus, through faith in him, we're made God's children, and he promises good for us. Do we rely on God, or live as if the only way good will come is if we make it happen? Now, despite the lack of faith, God is patient with Jacob. Esau is mad and out for blood, so Jacob runs away. He flees to Paddan Aram, Rebekah's hometown. It's on this journey, after his scheming, that God meets him in a dream and confirms his covenant with Jacob. Wow, Jacob's at his lowest, a low caused by his own lack of faith, and God comes at this point and raises him up. At Paddan Aram, Jacob meets his uncle Laban, yet it's not all plain sailing. Laban is also a schemer and tricks Jacob from the off. Laban has two daughters, Leah the older and Rachel the younger. Jacob falls in love with Rachel, and Laban agrees to a marriage in return for 7 years' work. 7 years go by and the wedding celebrations start. Finally, Jacob gets his bride and he spends the night with her in the tent. But it's not Rachel. In the morning, he discovers Leah lying by his side. Laban has tricked him. Jacob complains, completely understandable, and Laban's full of excuses and demands another 7 years of work to marry Rachel. Yet we also see that God is with Jacob. Jacob strikes a deal with Laban over pay. He will work for his uncle, and Laban will give him all the spotted and speckled sheep and goats as pay. Laban agrees and hastily removes all the spotted and speckled animals from the flock. Don't worry, Jacob has a plan. He gets some branches and strips the bark so they're stripy. He then places them in front of the strongest animals as they mate. What's the result? Their babies are speckled and spotted. But why? Because Jacob put a branch there? No. In Genesis chapter 31 and verses 10 to 13, it's clear this is God's intervention. When Jacob left Canaan, he had nothing. When he returns, he has a family, and he's extremely wealthy. Why? God is with him. But material wealth is not the only thing Jacob gained during his time in Paddan Aram. 20 years after leaving Canaan, he returns. And Esau comes out to see him with 400 men. Remember, Esau wanted to kill him. Is this a welcome committee or a war party? Jacob's first instinct is to come up with a plan. He cannot help himself. He splits his family and servants into 2 groups and sends 3 waves of gifts to seek to appease Esau. But then we see the change. He doesn't rely on his plans. No, he prays. Genesis chapter 32 and verse 11. Please rescue me from my brother Esau, for I am afraid of him. Otherwise he may come and attack me, the mothers and their children. Here's Jacob's emergency call out. Lord, I can't do this. Lord, I need you. That night, after getting his family across the ford at the Jabbok River, God appears to Jacob in the form of a man. This is most likely God the Son, who would come as Jesus years later. Jacob and God wrestle all night. Then he, that's God, said to Jacob, let me go, for it is daybreak. But Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. What's Jacob's heart here? What's he leaning on? God's blessing. He's not relying on his schemes. He's relying on God. Jacob has changed. In response, God gives Jacob his blessing and marks it by changing his name. In Genesis chapter 32 and verse 28 we read, your name will no longer be Jacob, he said. It will be Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed. Jacob is a changed person, so he gets a new name, a name that would define God's covenant people for years to come. Do you see the beauty of God's grace here? Jacob was a mess when God appeared to him and voiced the covenant promises. Yet that didn't prevent God from seeking him out and blessing him. That's how God works. We see it when we look at Jesus. In Luke chapter 19 and verse 10, Jesus says, for the Son of Man has come to seek and to save the lost. Who did Jesus come for? Not those who'd got it sorted. He came for the lost, the broken. He came for sinners. God doesn't wait till we've worked everything out before he lets us come in. But grace is more than that. We come to God as a mess. But when we come to God, he doesn't leave us a mess. No, he changes us. He makes us more like Jesus. He changes us just as he changed Jacob. Throughout his life, God had mercy on Jacob and taught Jacob to trust him. God is full of grace. What's your main approach to life? Is it, if you want something, you've got to go grab it? Or is it a calm trust in the Lord?